Oh, good morning. Sally Rutledge Ott with OTSI Nonprofit Maintenance. Please like my video and subscribe to my channel. I would appreciate it. Thank you. Cost you nothing to do it. Just a couple steps to go through Google and that kind of stuff. I am wearing these today because I'm going to need these in a glass as liquid when I get done with this nonprofit. Now, this one's about Arizona Andy. So let's get going on this. Let me put on my regular glasses. There, now I can see to read. Okay. I, if you watch my last video or my short that I put, 'cause I've been trying some shorts on YouTube and I still need to learn a whole bunch more. But the 32-year-old graphic designer on Andy's board in Arizona, 501c3, left me a voicemail last Friday morning, like at 1:45 a.m., and said, "My mother said I don't need to speak with you. Bye." Okay. Grown ass woman, 32 years old. Mama did something wrong. Now, she doesn't have time to talk to me. Her mother said she doesn't need to talk to me. I say it's time for her to go, right? I mean, she's creating problems. She thinks they need a new logo because she doesn't like it. She wants to design it. Hmm. Nothing about wanting to make this nonprofit better or stronger. Just she wants to create a new logo. So obviously that's why she got on the board. Now, I did talk to the 34-year-old jewelry designer as well. She was the other one that was in question, the other new board member that was in question on this board. Um, they tell me she is creating havoc, and I think she got caught up. And let me tell you why. Let me go through my notes with you, and I think you'll see that I think she was caught up. Um, she's a 34-year-old female, and she makes jewelry. I did look up some of her jewelry. It's beautiful. You know I love jewelry. It's beautiful. It's an art. Um, when she called me back, I immediately felt something was off. You know how you get that, you get that intuition. I don't know, maybe it's because the older I get, the more I can cut through people's bullshit pretty fast, most of the time. And I, there was something off with this. So I said, "Can I call you right back on the number that you just called me from? May I do that?" And she said, "No." So I asked her why not. She said, "Well, it's not my phone." I said, "Okay, can I call you back on your phone in 10 minutes? Will you get available?" And she said, "Yes." And then she hung up. So I called her back. I gave her about 15 minutes because I thought if she's in a situation, if she needed some time to get to her car, right? You got to give people an ample time. I mean, I don't know. Is she handicapped in any way? Does she have mobility issues? You can be 34 and have, issues. So I called her back and I said, "What was that about? Before we get started, I need to know what that was about because I have a feeling something was up." And she started to apologize to me. She said, "It wasn't my phone. It was the phone of the 32-year-old board member's mother." She said she felt bullied by both of them. Like, what alternative universe am I living in here? Right? where this mother is interfering in something that she shouldn't be interfering in. You're supposed to support and uplift your children, not bully. And obviously she's bullied. Now she was trying to bully this other woman as well. I said, listen, it's up to you to decide if you want to talk to me or not. You're not going to hurt my fifis if you don't. There's no law in the land that says you have to. This is just me doing some fact finding for this organization. She said, I want to talk to you. I'm now sitting inside my car. Do you mind if I drive down the street a ways from their house? I said, just leave the phone on and drive wherever you feel comfortable. So she did. It only took maybe 2 minutes. She just wanted to get up and around the corner. I said, well, are you in a good place to talk right now? Do you feel comfortable talking to me? And she said, yes, I do now. I said, great. I said, are you recording this with me? And she said, no. And I said, okay, neither am I. But I just wanted to throw it out there because it makes some people nervous. So, you got to kind of throw it out there a little bit. So I said, I'm going to ask you a few questions and answer me the best way you can. There's no right and wrong answer here. I said, have you sat on a nonprofit board before? And she said, no. I said, why did you want to this time? She said, to support the nonprofit who has supported me in the past. I said, that's a great reason. Right there. That's a great reason to support a nonprofit. Sitting on their board, doing the due diligence and of this kind of nonprofit. It's a great reason. I asked if she had any board development or board onboarding before she took her seat. She said, no. I wish I would have. I feel stupid sitting there. I said, well, who wouldn't? It's not your fault. No, I don't blame you. I would be the same way. I said, I asked her who on the board has helped you understand. She said, no one, other than the fellow 32-year-old who's trying to bully her and do whatever she wants. I said, so there's nobody else on the board that has tried to explain the board itself, how it functions, what it runs, what your legal and financial responsibilities are. Do you have directors and officers insurance? And she said, no, I don't know any of that. I really felt bad for her. This is another one of those instances where we want people on our boards, but we're not willing to train them to be on our boards. I said, do you want to do that? Would you like to learn? Would you like that kind of development? She said, yes, I don't want to be bullied anymore. I said, good for you. She said, I don't feel like there's anybody in my corner. I said, well, there is now. So fill me in. And she said, I really want to be on this board. I believe in the mission of the organization. I believe in Andy and his team. I just don't know what to do. I feel so stupid. I really felt bad for her. Because wouldn't you? First time you're ever sitting on a nonprofit board, you're a young 34-year-old female entrepreneur or male, doesn't matter, girl or boy. And nobody has been assisting her to try to understand what the hell she's supposed to do. That's how the vulnerable get used. Do you see that? I'm sure you do. It made me sad and angry for her. Here's a young professional who wants to learn and no one has tried to teach her. Well, that's going to change. I asked her if she were to get the development that she should have already, would she stay? And she said, as long as the 32-year-old board member doesn't stay, she wants her gone. She said she's extremely disruptive during board meetings. And she said, I don't feel like I know enough to interrupt her or shut her down. And she said what surprises her is nobody else on the board is shutting her down. That surprises me too. I said I would feel exactly the same way. Exactly the same way. I could almost feel her stress leaving her body as we kept talking. You know, you can hear when somebody's got a higher pitch and they're kind of talking in staccato and then pretty soon they just start to calm themselves. You can almost feel it, right? You can hear it in their voice. So I was getting through to her. I said we talked about her business and I offered her some suggestions when she asked for them. She asked if I made jewelry, and I said no, but I buy it and I wear it. I said, it's an art. And I said, good for you. And she said, well, it's her passion. And I said, excellent. You don't follow your passion in life. What the hell? Right? Why are you in a job that you don't like? It's crazy. Because I tell you what, the second you're canned, they'll hire somebody in your place. They're not going to cry when you leave. I like this girl. She can totally be saved on this. Now, it's time to get the bylaws amended. To add that board release clause, how a board member can be terminated off the board. 3/4 of the board has to vote to remove a board member at will. You don't have to have a reason. If the board votes you gone, you're gone. Especially in a board like this kind of makeup, which is a 501c3, where there's no members voting to elect a board member. This is all board members voting new board members. Sometimes I think that's an issue, but I think if it were handled more properly, it could be great, and it works. Because that 32-year-old and her mother need to be gone right now. No, no more. This is the whole issue with the board. Well, almost. This gal is the issue. She's a loudmouth. She refuses to change. And this nonprofit deserves better. Now, I wasn't going to poll the rest of the board members at the beginning of this. I was charged with fact-finding for these two, seeing if they're the reason the board has been malfunctioning. Well, it's not two, it's one. And that's an easy solution. Update and amend those bylaws, put the proper verbiage in there that should be in there, including they don't have enough information in the bylaws to even tell me how to vote. So I need to rework those voting clauses for them, make sure they're meeting compliance. And I'll talk to Andy this week because I'm waiting for that signed proposal. But what I want to find out too is, does he think I should poll the remainder of the board to make sure that I've culled out the bad cow? I don't know. I do know that from now on, they're going to have a different process. Okay. So here's the best process. Best practices, long time learning this. Here's what I think the best practices are. And this is my opinion, but I think a lot of nonprofit people would agree with me. Even though a board votes its own board members, like a C3, that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be doing background information. That doesn't mean that they need a board application. Why do you want to be on this board? Do you have time to devote? If you have a boss, if you work for, if you're just an employee, will your employer allow you to take this kind of time to be on a board? That's an important question. Because if you want to be part of this, do you have time to allot to it? Now, for some boards that run smoothly, it's maybe 1, 2, or 3 hours a month. That's it. Other boards that are the main volunteer base, that could mean a lot more time because you're doing more. You don't have employees. You're all volunteer. But stagnating a vote, stopping something moving forward, and going on meeting after meeting after meeting, trying to come to a decision is absurd. Get all the facts, present it to your board. It's a vote, yes or no. It's really easy. And if it's no, move on and come up with another plan, right? Don't get mad. Maybe you didn't do enough fact finding. Okay, so we're going to do a board application. Then we're going to do a board interview. And that means that if you have an executive director, which is the title for 501c3s, that executive director and the current president of the board sit down and interview this potential board member. Two people will see things very differently when it comes to this. Find out why they want to be on the board. Find out what they know about this nonprofit. You can get the information you need in that interview. I mean, why do HR people interview people? Because they're trying to find out that information. Are they going to be a good fit? Are they saying something that their resume or background doesn't follow? So it's not that hard to do. Then, if you approve, the executive director and the president of the board approve this person being, nominated to the board, then you take this person to the full board and do another interview. Let the board ask the questions, right? Let them all ask that. It's not that hard. And if they say, well, I really don't want to do that, say, well, that's our process, and we're sorry you feel that way. Is there a committee that you might want to be on? Because sometimes maybe people want to get involved, but they don't want that whole due process of being on a board or finding out, wait, we're legally and financially responsible for this organization. Well, hell yeah, you are. We have to sign legal policies like confidentiality, conflict of interest, and whistleblowers and antitrust. And well, yeah, you do. Some people who have been on boards understand that completely. The new people that have never sat on a board need that explained to them. Why? Why do we sign these documents? What does that mean for our organization? What does that mean for you? And ask them, if you're a potential new board member, here's the question you ask them. Do you carry directors and officers liability insurance on me? If they say no, walk out the door. You don't ever, ever want to sit on a board of directors for a nonprofit that doesn't have directors and officers liability insurance, because nonprofits get sued all the time. It's just, and it's going to get worse, folks. It's going to get worse. Even though these are the people that are helping people, whatever, it's going to get worse. And because of that, knowing that, having that knowledge, you can then make a decision based on that one answer. Now, I would never sit on a board of directors without D&O insurance, ever. I like my stuff. I don't want to be sued personally for a vote that I've made at a board level, or a set of minutes that weren't carefully reviewed enough, or a set of financials that we voted on instead of just placing on file for audit, because you don't vote on financials. Maybe the CPA organization can, but unless you've done an audit of those books on a monthly basis, and I mean an audit like a licensed professional would do, you don't vote on them. You review, you ask questions. Absolutely, that's your responsibility. But then you move to place on file for audit, period, no vote. That's it. And it has to be designated in your minutes that way, because minutes are legal documents and open to audit. Right? The other nonprofit people are shaking their heads. Yes. So I talked to Andy on Friday morning. I said, lots have happened here. There's a lot that's happened here. I've got this 32-year-old, his mother, and he said, I know the mother. I said, you know the mother. He says, yeah. I said, and? He said, well, I don't want to disparage anyone. I said, and he said, well, she's kind of a wingnut. I said, she's a big wingnut. I don't even know her, but I know she's a big wingnut because they had this 34-year-old come over to the mother's house and then call me on the mother's phone so that the mother could hear what I'm saying. I'm just a facilitator, right? I don't get to vote yes or no on anything. I'm not on the board. And he said, all right, we need her gone, don't we? I said, yeah. And I said, now you're going to hear from me just a little bit. I said, what the hell are you doing placing people on your board that have had no development, no board orientation, no onboarding? He said, it hasn't been a problem before. I said, well, it is now. I said, Andy, you know this is why you do things. You go to all those state chartered events where you're supposed to be learning from other nonprofits. Has no one said that? He said, oh, they probably have. He said, my board just didn't think it was necessary. I said, well, your board's wrong. It's absolutely necessary. And I said, and for us to go forward together as a unit, to work together, you need to understand I'm going to demand that. Because this could have been resolved quickly. This could have been a no to her almost immediately, and then a no to her mother on the other side of it. I said, this isn't going to happen anymore. It can be easier. It can be so much more. It can be better. It can be cleaner. So he said, that they're going to send me that proposal to redo their bylaws, to amend their bylaws, which is almost a complete gut of these documents. I mean, I read through them and I just, they're like 19 pages long and it's like committees and everything that each committee does. And I said, do the committees all do what's in the bylaws? No. I said, then you're violating your own bylaws. I said, bylaws are governing documents. They tell you who, where, what, how, when, and then all the other legal indemnification, dissolution, all the other things that go in there. I said, you're voting. Your paragraph on voting is 3 sentences, and it doesn't tell me how you vote. I said, I can't even believe these made it through your attorney general. So we're going to redo those. We're going to make those right. We're going to amend. We're going to get the board to approve because I think they're going to be happy that there's some clarity. Now, I forgot to ask him if he wants me to talk to the rest of the board. So I'm waiting for him to email me back. I'd rather have that in writing. But I think maybe I should. I think I should do a poll on this. And I also said, your bylaws need to be a little bit more strict with regard to no less than number, which is 3. You can't have less than 3 on your board, and no more than. I said, you have 19 board members, and even if we get rid of this woman, you still have 18 board members. I said, it's no wonder you're having trouble making decisions. That's a lot more work for you to try to prepare because 18 people all have different ideas and suggestions and on how they want to do things. And I did ask him, I said, do you do a board development day once a year? Do you redo the board development or redo the legals? He said, no. I said, okay, you've been busy running your organization instead of working on the business of your organization. Because once you're a nonprofit, whether it's a C3 charitable and church or C6 member organization like a chamber of commerce, you still have rules, regulations, and compliance that you must follow. And they really haven't been doing enough of that. They've been so busy functioning and running this medium-sized nonprofit and doing a really good job with that some of the schematics around this haven't been done properly. And it's running them into issues because of it. I said, Andy, this can be a quick fix. We can nip this sucker in the bud. We can get this thing moving on the right way. I need to know who's on your board. when they're done with their board seat, when their term has expired. And then he said, well, we don't have term limits. And I almost passed out. I said, well, I didn't see it in your bylaws, but I was hoping that you might have had a policy on it. He said, no. I said, that's an issue. We need term limits in every branch of everything. We need term limits, right? I said, you know what? I'll be able to find out more if your board approves me contacting each board member and doing a little interview with them. I'll find out who wants to be on this board, and I'll find out who doesn't want to be on this board any longer. And maybe they want to move from a board to a committee. That would be great, right? We need good committee people. I mean, they're all volunteers. At some point, somebody that's been on the board 6 or 7 years has to be going, am I on this for the rest of my damn life? Or I really love it and I feel like I'm making a difference. Those are the people you want to keep. So I'm hoping that they vote yes so that I can start that process. So there's a couple things that are up in the air right now that I'm juggling with Andy, trying to get this organized. He said he doesn't think anybody on the board is going to have a problem voting out this 32-year-old graphic designer and her mother because it's caused too much. She's so disruptive during board meetings. You know, she doesn't get her way. She slams her notebook down. If she doesn't get her way, she refuses to vote on anything. She sits quietly, or she has, she's stormed out of several meetings. She's only been on this for a few months. I mean, and she's like, she came in with a personal agenda. It sounds like it's her mother's personal agenda. She came in with a personal agenda, didn't go through any onboarding, orientation, any paperwork at all, and decides that she's the one that's going to be the problem. It's like she knew it when she was coming in. We can stop it. That can stop. So I'm hoping the next time I talk to you, I'm going to have more information about this nonprofit. I'm really excited too that I'm going to be recording with Angie Hibben, the president and CEO of the Oswego Area Chamber of Commerce this week. I'm really excited to talk with Angie again, and this time without technical issues, Angie. But she was so good last time because chambers are facing some different issues these days. And there's some board stuff that I want to talk to Angie about that I want you to hear from a veteran chamber president of a very successful chamber. And it's because of Angie it's successful. But I want you to hear some different things about boards and board development and what Angie does and why she does it. You know, she's a graduate of the Institute of Management, which is Chamber University. It's a 4-year program. And she's going to have some really good insight on this. So I'm excited about getting Angie back on. Thank you, Angie, for doing this. So you don't want to miss that video with Angie either, because if you're a nonprofit, and she'll say whether it's a C3 or C6, it doesn't matter. There's certain things that you should do before that board member ever sits down to make their first vote. Before they cast that vote, there's some things that need to be done. Some precursor things that will help them, help your board, and help the mission of the organization. Because every vote that a board of directors makes, nonprofit or not nonprofit, for profit, needs to be in forward movement for that mission of that organization. If you don't take care of cats and dogs, you don't need to be voting on buying cat food. See what I mean? So this is going to be a really good conversation with Angie again. But meanwhile, I'm hoping I get to keep fact-finding with the rest of this board because this can be interesting. I may be able to cull that down. I'd like to get this board down to 12. So can I find six more people to get off? I don't know. Maybe. Is there four people I can get rid of? Does everybody need to stay because they're all great? Maybe. Maybe that's it. And the one little thing I'm going to tell you about this no less than number for your board and no more than number for your board, it's an article in your bylaws, is because you, and the reason that I love having that in there, and I put it in every set of bylaws, I won't do bylaws without it, is that it's really difficult to get 18, 19, 20 people to agree on anything. It's also very difficult to continue to have meetings with quorum. The more people you end up on there, the more people that aren't showing up. I need to find out, do they want to stay on the board, especially the ones that have been on there the longest? Are they willing to go through board development in order to understand better what their responsibilities are? And that'll give me a lot of insight on how to move this forward and how to prepare those clauses in the bylaws. So hopefully I'm going to be back with you soon on that kind of information. Until then, support your local nonprofits. It means an awful lot. It doesn't just mean an awful lot to the nonprofit. It means a lot to the people or animals that are being served by that nonprofit. Go do good things. Peace out.